Making waves, disruption. These words imply change. They demand change. Peaks and valleys, highs and lows, ebbs and flows, destruction and creation. But what do these words, change and creation, mean in our lives? They say that change is the essence of life. We surrender who we are for what we are to become. But this surrendering who we are for what we are to become can be so scary. It requires dramatic personal change, transformation, creating a future version of an unknown self. And in this path, we make choices with unknown consequences ahead. They say that those that are enlightened know the way. They look as though having clarity from a crystal ball and know a better way, a path that we should seek. So I tried to find this path, and they had a phrase that says, the path to enlightenment is to end where you began and know it for the very first time. And I had absolutely no clue what that meant. But I found a clue in the word enlightened. The word light is right in the middle. And it's something we can all do together, this thread, this hint that I found. Could everybody just close their eyes really quick? Picture in your mind's eye a white, bright light in the distance. Now imagine it coming closer and moving left to right. Keep your eyes closed. Raise your hand if what you're picturing is circular or spherical in any way. Raise your hand really high. Now, leave your hand up and look around. Almost everybody's raising their hand. And every time I've done this, it's been the exact same result. People say, well, that's a coincidence. I don't believe so. The Big Bang, the creation of our entire universe, a tiny sphere of huge mass. Our sun at the center of our solar system, a sphere that creates energy for all our solar system. Our planet, a sphere that creates life and everything around us. Our eyeball creates our point of view from the time we're born through our entire life. A basketball creates immense joy or agony depending if Duke or Carolina happen to be winning at the time. And a tiny atom whose spherical nucleus creates all the matter, including ourselves, of our universe. And so I began to think, wait a minute, maybe end where we began isn't metaphorical at all. Maybe it's instruction. It's a code to tell us where to look. After all, where did we all begin but a tiny fertilized spherical egg inside our mother's womb? And what if you remember when we were kids, remember playing with bubbles? Every single bubble forms a perfect sphere. There's no trapezoids or pyramids or cubes. Almost like a mystery was hidden in plain sight. And we didn't even ask, why are those all forming spheres almost magically with no other shapes? And what if that code that ties creation, transformation, is a code that's actually embedded in our own lives to act as a guiding light, that crystal ball of clarity? And what if, more amazingly, that code, that program software that creates predictable results like bubbles, was only 5 rules, 5 lines to a code to help guide us in our lives? Well, I'd love to share with you 5 properties, real properties of spheres that in the universe are created and how they might apply directly to our lives. I'd like to take you on that journey together. Spherical rule number 1. Why, when bubbles form, to start with, why do they create these spherical shapes? Well, it's actually very simple. A sphere creates the maximum volume with the least amount of surface area. Simply said, it gets the most with the least. What is it in our lives that help point us to get the most out of our short moments in our lives? Isn't it our passion? And what's amazing, isn't that passion actually embedded in each of us? We don't pick our passions. It's almost like we're born hard-coded, just like a bubble becomes a sphere. People say people use fashion so much that it's cliche. I say it's not cliche. It's a rule. It's embedded inside of us. It's our magnetic north that points and guides us through our lives to make great decisions to get the most out of our short lives. When I was a young boy, I was passionate about building things. Other kids would be out playing sports, and I was building Legos and erector sets. Later, kids were playing video games. I was building forts and tree houses. Later in my life, I went on to build products and teams and companies, and we did amazing, fun things together. My grandfather used to say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And isn't that what our passion is, our magnetic north to point where we need to go? Spherical rule number 1, it gets the maximum volume with the least amount of surface area. Like our passion points us to get the most out of every short moment in our lives. Spherical rule number 2. When a sphere expands, every point expands equally from the center, and the same is true when it retracts. Every point almost magically stays exactly the same distance from the center. What does this mean in our lives? Well, passion alone is just a guiding star. It's when we plug our effort and intention into that passion that magical things start to happen in our lives. Over and over again, we see it's like a battery plugged into a light. We plug intention, and our effort and passion comes to life over and over. But there's a one-way switch, a mutual exclusivity between plugging our effort into passion and plugging it into fear. And every day we make a choice where to plug in. Just like mutually exclusive. Everybody take a deep breath in with me. Everybody take a deep breath out. Now do both at the same time. Very difficult, if not possible. Same way plugging effort into our passion or our fear. And it's like sports. There's offense and defense. What do we do in offense? We're gaining yardage. We're making things happen. We're going for goals, scoring points. In defense, we're retracting, moving back, trying to stop bad things from happening. Isn't that so true with what we do in our lives? It reminds me of an old story about an ancient master who was a painter. He painted woodland creatures on cave walls, deer and wolves and bear, and decided to make his life's masterpiece, a ferocious painted tiger. He spent months crafting the dyes to get the oranges and blacks just perfect, handcrafted the brushes, and began painting this massive, ferocious tiger on the wall, with every detail intact, the glint in his eye, the saliva on his tooth. And when he finished the tiger with the last brush stroke, the last hair on the tail, the master stepped back. What he created was so vicious, so ferocious, and so realistic, he was actually convinced the tiger was alive and ran out of the cave, never to return. The story sounds funny until we think about what we do when we plug our effort into our fears. We create painted tigers. We think of scenarios over and over, crafting them with more clarity and detail, things that don't even really exist, and actually react. Think about something as simple as losing a wallet. Oh my gosh, where did it go? What am I going to do? Who stole it? How much money was there? The credit cards. What's the line at the DMV going to be like? Anger, frustration, angst pour into us, real feelings. And then we find it, our wallet, poof, the painted tiger's gone. Spherical rule number 2. Every point on a sphere expands or contracts equally from its center. The same way when we put our effort and intention into passion or fear, it infuses and touches every point of our lives equally. Spherical rule number 3. A sphere is actually interesting. It's made up of an infinite number of circles combined together. Over and over again, we've seen where these spheres, when you look at them on the surface, only show a glimpse of truly what's inside. You don't see the infinite number of circles. You just see the surface, the contact point. What this means in our lives. Over and over again, I've seen when you put effort into your passion, you make things happen, you try things, you make mistakes. Mistakes don't define us. Mistakes over time become experience and knowledge that help us grow. But how often in our life do we get judged or judge others by the surface contact point of our mistakes trying to grow? When our true self, when you cut a sphere in half, it will always show that perfect circle. Our mistakes don't define us, they help us grow. It's staying true to our inner self that really matters. And how often do we, when we look at other people and they make a mistake or do something that doesn't make sense, judge them for what they did? Or how many of you have been judged for something you did that the others didn't understand? The surface of a sphere shows less than 1% of 1% of what's inside. And what matters the most is inside and the fact that you're trying to grow. We've seen it over and over again. And this is called authenticity. When I was a young boy, I made a decision not to drink alcohol. At first, I was seen as obedient, following the rules. Then I was a little odd when I wasn't experimenting like the other kids. In high school, I was an absolute outcast. Actually, outcast would have been about 3 social rungs above where I stood in the chain. In college, I was an outsider, more accepted, but still didn't participate in keg stands and beer pong like the rest. But when we could legally drink and drive, I was attractive. People would actually flip coins and fight over who got the designated driver in the car. And then later in life, as people went through their personal struggles, they came back to me and they said, when I judged you at this point in your life and made fun of you, I didn't realize what was going on. I admire your choice. The truth was, I didn't make choices based on all the different perceptions of the surface contact of my life. I stayed true to my inner self all along. Spherical rule number 3. A sphere is made up of an infinite number of circles. At the end of the day, it's what's inside the surface contact. We will make mistakes when we put effort against our passion and fears. Look beyond the surface because the truth lies inside. Spherical rule number 4. When a sphere comes in contact with something, it will always make a perfect 90-degree angle with the surface it comes in contact with. If the surface of the sphere is elastic and flexible like we become when we put effort and grow and expand our lives, it will always bounce back, repeatably and dependably, embedded in the rule. What does that mean in our lives? We are given the opportunity to keep coming back and bouncing back over and over again. They say walls aren't there to stop us. They're there to show how bad we want what's on the other side. How many people have heard that said when God closes a door, he opens a window? But he doesn't say how many windows or how tall the building is and how long you have to search. When I was a young man, I took a small boat out way too far. I was putting effort against my passion and went out way too far and came back way too late. About halfway back, it got dark, the sun set, and a vicious, intense storm hit me. Bashed the boat, bruised me left and right. The water knocked out all the electronics. Between the fog, the rain, the lightning, and the waves that were kicked up by the 30-mile-an-hour winds, it was not a good situation. There's a little cuddy cabin down below, which looked safe. It got me out of the cold. It got me out of the rain. It looked safe. And it was a guarantee that I would never see home again. The illusion of safety was just an illusion. The hardest path forward is going through each of those waves that seem to get bigger and bigger. Adversity, frustration, it was scary. Every wave seemed to hit me harder. But I made a choice. Face each wave, not think about the thousands of waves between me and my harbor, just the one wave in front of me and make the choice to conquer it. Given the ability to make that choice in that moment over and over again. When I finally made it back to the harbor, when I made it back to the port, first thought was, I am never doing that again. But as the old saying goes, boats aren't built to stay in the harbor. All boats are safe in the harbor, but that's not what they're built for. But ironically, what we're built for is the same rule that's embedded in the sphere. When we come in contact with something, we are given the ability to resiliently, repeatedly, and dependably bounce back. Spherical rule number 4. When it comes in contact with something, it makes a 90-degree angle and always bounces back, just like we have that ability and choice every moment in our lives. The 5th spherical rule. When a sphere comes together with another sphere, it creates a bond. There is no limit to the number of spheres that can bond together over and over again. And something magical happens when the walls break down between these spheres. It creates something beautiful, bigger than any individual alone. What does that mean in our lives? Isn't that what means so much in our lives when we bond together with other people? When we make connections? We make connections and open doors that make our lives matter. Over and over again, I've seen where that adds so much context. And don't we call that, in human terms, love? And not just passionate love, but the love and caring for others that enriches our lives. When my 3-year-old daughter, Kyla, looked up at me, she jumped up in my arms with these big blue eyes. She looked and she pressed her chest against mine. She whispered in my ear, she said, "Dad, my heart touches your heart forever." Talk about transformative. In that moment, I realized that every triumph, every failure I had was hollow compared to the people in my life that I had to share those experiences with. In the absence of sharing those connections, my triumphs and failures meant nothing. And together with those that I loved and bonded with, it meant so much more. And don't we seek out those people to bond with, where we're on an adventure, we're putting our effort and intention against our passion, staying true to ourselves and being resilient? Don't we add those people in our lives? And the good news is, once that door is open, even if we don't keep in contact, we always have the chance to walk through that open door. Those bonds cement forever. So tying this all together, it actually creates a wave, a sine wave. We put our passion, it's our magnetic north to point where we want to go in our lives, to get the most out of our lives. It's our effort that we infuse in our passion that touches every aspect of our short lives. At the end of the day, it's our authenticity, staying true to ourselves, because when we put our effort against passion, we're going to try things and make mistakes. It's that authenticity of staying true to ourselves so that when we fall, we have the ability and resiliency to bounce back up over and over again. And this wave is made completed by bonding and sharing those things with those that we love. In our lives, as we gain experience, we take more risks, the waves become higher. There's more failure to face, you fall further. And the waves can come faster and faster and expand and ripple through our lives and those that we care about. The sphere concept's in all of our language: inner circle, sphere of influence, circle of friends. Without even knowing it, this code exists everywhere around us. And let's go back to this thought of the path to end where we began. When you take a perfect sine wave and you take the end and you put it where it began, it creates a perfect circle. Almost exactly like the perfect sphere we were inside our mother's womb and grew layer, cell by cell, layer by layer to create the magic person that you are today. And as we put these 5 principles, which are all real, embedded in the sphere as part of our universe, tied to creation, tied to transformation, it actually magically affects our lives, transforms who we are, expands the scope of the life that we lead and who we touch. And there's also another interesting property. If you take 5 points equally spaced around a circle, it creates a star. And so we end where we began. When we closed our eyes and pictured a light that we could have put in a lightning bolt or a hashtag symbol or anything, we all pictured a light together. Maybe that coincidence wasn't such a coincidence at all. And we end where we began. And I hope you know some things that you already knew. If these rules are truly part of our universe, you already knew them, but maybe we know them for the first time together. And you take it forth on your journey. And as we end where we began, there's a symbol that helps remind us. An oyster takes a tiny grain of sand and adds layer and layer meticulously over it to create something precious, a pearl. And so this journey we took together, we can remember as a tiny pearl of wisdom: passion, effort, authenticity, resilience, and love. And I hope you take these things that are embedded inside you, take your precious life that you've been given, and make a huge splash. Thank you so much.